So, this short discussion this morning is going to be shining a spotlight on digital assessment. It's a really fantastic opportunity to take some time and focus on something that has always been an integral part of learning: assessment. So, my name is Vicky Bacon. I am an Apple Professional Learning Specialist, which means that I've got apple juice running through my veins. But digital assessment is agnostic to the device that you use. So today I'd like you to kind of have that spin on what I'm talking about, although I will be specifically talking about Apple tools. I'm partnering with academia today, and after this talk, if you want to come and see me and have a deeper conversation, please come and find me on the stand. So, in our 20 minutes together, we are going to whiz through these aspects of digital assessment. I want to raise your awareness of where digital assessment sits at present and what the future may hold. And it's almost like a call to action. I'd like you to think about how you are going to support your students to embrace the digital assessments that are coming for them, inevitably. So let's not waste any more time, let's get started. So what I'd like to do is a very quick Slido poll to begin with. So if you've got a device, I'm going to show a QR code. A really quick question: do you currently engage in assessing your pupils digitally? As we do that, I'd like you to think about assessment in terms of why it's important that we actually continue to think about it and not be derailed by all of the other flashy kind of elements that are coming into digital education at this moment. So we've got frequently, actually I should have asked, how many of you are actual educators in the classroom? Okay, so I would absolutely expect that result. I'm glad that it's not often and never is a zero, because assessment is part of learning. You can't have one without the other. So today I'm going to show you how the current landscape sits with digital education. On the board here, the messaging behind is that actually assessment is really complex. The actual act of judging or deciding the amount or value added or quality, importance of something is something that as teachers we do naturally. It's part of our conversation. So depending on how the process is labelled or named determines how we see it. Since 2022, our assessment process has been under the spotlight, and I think it's fair to say that we need to ask the question, is it fit for purpose? We may need to rethink how we assess, and in doing so, we need to be proactive in that. I hope we can agree that whichever assessment is in place, it should support all learners to give them full recognition of their strengths of that person, be inclusive and equitable, and measure the full range of competencies. Ultimately, this shouldn't be limited to a single measure point or a score, but incorporate a wider spectrum of skills that have been developed over time. And if you're working with digital technology as an everyday work tool in your school, you'll know that it's those skills that you are embracing and encouraging and seeing in your students. And if that bit goes unnoticed in the assessment, I think that's a missed opportunity. We could learn an awful lot from our EYFS colleagues because they introduce a comprehensive learning portfolio right from the beginning. And it's that portfolio of evidence that can be built up that gives us such a rich understanding of a pupil. And imagine if we continued that through to when the students left school and they started their life in work with that evidence of how they approach tasks, I think that would be a great state to be in. All educators agree that assessment is important and accepted as part of the learning process, as I've said before. If we're in settings that are embracing that digital technology and transforming learning, we need to transform assessment. So because it's mandatory, it's just, we don't have any choice as educators as to assess. It's really important that we think about how that's going to become part of our teaching. And the other great thing is, because it's interdisciplinary, it doesn't matter if I'm a maths teacher, a science teacher, history, whatever, I'm going to be able to embrace these changes. So like I said, is it time to rethink assessment? And what is actually there now, today, that you can use to support your students along that journey? I just want you to have a little pause at this moment, because I'm asking you to think about what that might look like. And that word better that's in that sentence should be, for you, very much focused on the personalisation for your students. What does better look for them? And how can we achieve that? So there's a growing appetite for an assessment system that is reflective of evidence that the kinds of skills and dispositions which students succeed at are not only marked at the end of a journey. What can we do meaningfully now to support the necessary skill set of both teachers and their learners in evidencing that knowledge? Let's see what's available to us. If you are familiar with using an iPad or a Mac, you may know that assessment mode is built into that device already. It's available to app developers to use as part of their app. So if you've got an iPad, you can't just turn on assessment mode. You have to go through an app to do that has made that possible. But it's a really cool feature, which I'm going to explain to you now. In assessment mode, testing apps automatically lock and configure the iPad or Mac for a secure testing environment that prevents students from accessing other apps or features. And this includes hardware such as the camera, the home button, autocorrect, check spelling, those kind of features. So after a student has completed a test where those features have been locked to them for a duration of the test, the iPad would then automatically return to its usual mode. So once the testing app has been installed, there is no separate testing setup. It's really simple and easy to do. And that means that there's no extra management time for you as teachers. And depending on the test, you can now decide which features are enabled or restricted. For example, a maths test, you may restrict the keyboard shortcuts, but enable check spelling. While maybe in history, you might enable the dictation, but not have predictive text. So the test is set up to allow that to happen. And also you can do exactly the same for the Mac in that testing environment. So let's see what assessment mode looks like on the iPad. And you can see here that we just have a still for you to have a look at. So this is a little video here of what students would experience when they sign up to this particular app, which is TestNav, which is enabled through assessment mode. Other apps might give you a similar experience. So I'm just going to run that through so you can see. The students are given a short example, and they have then to tick yes. When they do that, they get notified at the top that their iPad is going into assessment mode, and it will be locked in assessment mode until either the time is run out for that test or they submit their work. This is what it might look like in terms of the student usually would see if they highlighted a particular word, you can see that they can define that word as part of it. In assessment mode, the option just doesn't appear. So they don't even get the option to tick on it. And that's automatic. So the device is locked into the assessment mode until the student has finished the test. So the writing features such as autocorrect and check spelling are disabled automatically. So what I want to do is very briefly just talk about Mac, because you might be in that ecosystem. So on this example here, notice that Maps and Safari are open on the screen. Assessment mode ensures that students can't interact with their other iOS or Mac OS apps during the testing environment, and assessment mode blocks notifications, background apps, and other possible distractions. So it's a nice, secure environment to be in. And once a student has completed the test, again, the Mac automatically returns to those general user settings. As I said earlier, I'd like to leave you with an opportunity to start preparing your students for digital assessment. And one of those ways is to use Schoolwork. And Schoolwork is one of the apps that, if you are working in the Apple ecosystem, you may well be aware of. You need to use Apple School Manager and an MDM for this, but once that's set up, Schoolwork is ready to use. So using Schoolwork, you can convert existing documents into an interactive school assessment. Just going to let that percolate. So if I'm working with my class and I've got a particular document, a worksheet that I use, I can scan that document into Schoolwork and say it's an assessment. Allocate it to my students using assessment mode, restricting them depending on if it's open book or closed book. And I can run that assessment. So I don't have to prepare lots of things in advance. It's just what we're doing at that time. So the students get to use the work that they feel comfortable with. As students submit their work back to Schoolwork and review the school, the teacher can analyse those results and then use that analysis to work on all the other students' work as well. So you can use one as a good example, as an example for the rest of the class. I really wish I could show you some of this on here, but after this session, do come across to the academia stand and we can show you in person. So, as I said, an open book assessment creates a more open test environment, allowing students to use other resources. So it might be that it's a more informal way of testing. But when you want to, you can absolutely use the features closed down in an assessment mode to do that. So if you have multiple teachers in your class, assessments can be sent between them and you can collaborate, and draft assessments you can store and use as needed. And the best thing here is you don't need an internet connection to send the assessments. If the connection is interrupted during the test, you can save the assessment as a draft and you would see that as well. And this is all backed up by the security that you already have within your iPad. Thank you very much for listening and have a great day.